For much now, I've been talking about the issue of voting, and of course, you have different groups who are putting together various initiatives. Now, when it comes to voting, now a coalition of groups called the Movement for Black Lives has started the Electoral Justice Project to help with that. Now, in May, they took to the streets for a variety of issues, including economic justice. They've also been holding a series of town halls the last 2 days to mobilize voters to get out and support issues that matter to black people and other oppressed groups as well. Joining us right now via Skype from St. Louis is Kayla Reed, an organizer with the St. Louis Action Council and the Movement for Black Lives. So Kayla, so exactly what is this? How extensive is it around the country in terms of groups who are actually doing this, and how many folks have you been able to touch?
Yeah, so good morning, Roland, and thank you for having me on. So the Electoral Justice Project is a new project. It launched this November. It is a project to do two things, to highlight all the beautiful Black-led electoral work that's already happening across the country, and really to coordinate between groups as we move into 2018, especially November. So this weekend we launched with 20 town halls across the United States. We had some in New York, we had Greensville, North Carolina, Europa, Mississippi with Fannie Lou Hamer's niece, St. Louis. And throughout the rest of the month, we'll have cities like Dallas, Philadelphia, and Miami participating.
And so, obviously, if you look at the last election, the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies did their poll. It shows that the group that was going to vote the most among African Americans were going to be older voters. The group that was voting the least were millennial voters. So are you really focused on millennials to get them to understand that not voting leaves your power at home, and so, and not just even when it comes to voting, but also going beyond voting, saying, and what do you do the day after?
Absolutely. And so that's why we're starting a year before the midterm elections, because we know that it's just not GOTV that's going to get people to the polls next year. We know that there needs to be a deep commitment. There needs to be consistent education and engagement. And that's really the thought behind the town halls this month that are the product of the Electoral Justice Project. And so we know that those numbers exist, and we are hopeful that with continued engagement and not just talking to people, but listening to their concerns and really digging in on the local level, that we're going to see an increase in voter mobilization, and not just folks going to the polls because they feel like they have to, but because they're invested in seeing change in their community. I'm going to play something for you here. This was I found this video. Hopefully, my folks, if y'all let me know if you see the video, Shelley. So I was going through my archives and I came across a video of Kerry Washington from an inauguration inauguration event that took place in 2009, where she was talking about this. I'm gonna have it ready for it in a second, because I think what I keep making to people is that on one hand, we can talk about, again, what election day, what you must do, but it's what you do the day after. How do you tell people then, okay, we voted for you, and even if my candidate didn't win, we still must be advocating for our issues to school districts, to city councils, to county commissioners' courts, to state legislatures, to governors, to members of Congress as well. That is also vital, that we are in that game. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that the political landscape right now is really chaotic. And so we are convening space to demystify the electoral process, to provide clarity to what's actually going on the federal, state, and local levels, and really listening to folks' frustrations, because they rightfully have them, and building together to say, where do we need to be? We in St. Louis have been working toward building political power for the last 3 years since Ferguson. We lost a mayoral campaign this year with when we put our weight behind Tashara Jones, and we have not stopped being active since, holding the mayor that won accountable. And so we're really hoping to make the example of the strength that we built here a national model, and I think that that's going to happen. All
right, then. Kayla, we sure appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I want to go to our panel here. Again, she made a critical point, which I said in 2015 the Democrats and Hillary Clinton did not do, and that is, you better be focused on black folks 18 months out and not in the final 3 months. Don't try to figure out in 6 weeks, oh, we're going to hit some churches, drop some ads. No, you literally have to mobilize and organize and teach 18 months out
And if you're Democrats trying to win midterms next year, trying to shrink Republican majorities, you better be doing that now and not just say, okay, we'll get to that thing in August.
But Roland, I mean, really, that timeline, you might even need to take, 2 years before, because there is a lot of animosity. There is a lot of folks who are not happy about the electoral process. And then you're talking about reaching millennials, especially when you have so many millennials who are conscious because of social justice movements like the movement for Black Lives and whatnot. I mean, at this point, there has to be a concerted effort. You got to give the next generation a real purpose, some real gains. There got to be some wins almost assured in order for us to get involved. Otherwise, it's going to be an effort in futility.
But Wendy, the thing that they're doing is, I think, which is important is, it has to be issue-driven and not candidate-driven.
Absolutely.
See, I hear people say, hey, I need a candidate that excites me. No. There has to be issues that you care about that are driving then how you respond with your ballot.
Absolutely, and I think that that's paramount because we see right now that there's so many public policy issues that do not match the needs of Black and brown communities.
Right.
So there's a lot to be done. It's not as though you have to necessarily pander to these communities. There is work that needs to be done within these communities, and there are things that we as millennials would like to see happening. And, it really bothers me when I hear people say, oh, I didn't like this candidate, and that's why I didn't vote. It's not about the individual. It's about what they're going to do to help the community in which you stand behind.
But the other part of it is that unfortunately you still are talking about a generation that is influenced by the name, by the brand of the candidate more so than by the issue. So if we're talking about having an informed citizenry among millennials, then that really starts with understanding what the issues are and then going into the process of who is standing for what.
Right.
But there's a lot of issues. I mean, there's a huge dynamic. There's a dichotomy where, we want to hear the issues, but at the same time, we do like the glitz and glamour.
And that's nefarious too.
That's a very hard balance.
That's a delicate dance.
But Shamichael, here's the reality. If you love the Second Amendment, if you whether it's the issue of being pro-life, that's how other folks, they're voting on issues.
No, they are.
They're not voting on, bottom line is white conservative evangelicals know doggone well Donald Trump ain't even close to being a Christian.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
all they care about is him putting a conservative on the Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you look at conservative voter ID and what conservatives are concerned about, to your point, it's a plethora of issues, and there are many conservatives who do not like Donald Trump because of his character and many of his antics, but they recognize this guy's a Republican, and he's our best chance of moving policies forward that are of importance to us. But also, I think when you look at demographic changes, when you look at the upcoming census that's coming up in a couple of years, you look at Hispanic voters. Most Hispanic voters are no longer living in the southern parts of the states. They're all across the country now. So as a political operative, I'm looking at those numbers, and if I was a Democrat, not only am I concerned about African Americans, such as African American women, those numbers are decreasing now, which you've talked about on your show before. I would also be concerned about Hispanic voters, because I think Republicans have an opportunity, at least if they can get 30% of Hispanic voters, to continue to be successful politically.
But let's be clear, if you're a Democrat, the reason you should be concerned about that is because of Republicans and voter suppression.
That's right.
Because you can smile all you want to,
right.
but
That's
we know
true.
Doggone well Republicans have a very clear focus.
Yes.
This Chris Kobach committee is this so-called voter fraud committee. That's about voter suppression.
You know my position on those.
Yeah, but bottom line, but that's still a fact there.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no. That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong. He
Unfiltered.
wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.